This is the Mobile Philosopher Podcast. It's a lucky dip of weird distractions taken from the work of philosophers living and dead. Mostly dead. If you enjoy this, you'll probably enjoy the Mobile Philosopher books, which are available in the usual places. Today's episode, A Walk with Your Dog. I'm going to talk today about some philosophical views on the differences between humans and animals. So, imagine going for a walk with your dog. So how does that start? It starts with you asking your dog, "A walk? Fancy a walk?" And of course, whenever you ask that question, you always get the same emphatic reply. So that proves, surely, that dogs understand language. Your dog understands the word walk. So you would set off on your walk, let's imagine, thinking, all right, well, if dogs understand language, what is it that sets me apart from my dog? And you might think, well, okay, the dog might have some kind of understanding of language, but what the dog can't do is reason. Remember the old philosopher's axiom that man is the rational animal. What does that mean? Well, it means, look, we can take what we already know, right? And then we can form arguments to get new knowledge. And dogs can't do that, right? Dogs can't reason. They might understand the odd word, but they can't use them to form arguments. They can't take what they already know and then have a think and then infer new knowledge. Well, maybe you go along a little bit. Your dog has got a scent. It's on the trail of something. And you're following this prey along a path, and eventually the path forks left and right. And your dog sniffs the path on the left and smells nothing. And so, without sniffing the path on the right, she sets off on the path on the right. Chrysippus, an ancient Greek Stoic philosopher, drew the conclusion from this that, in actual fact, dogs can reason. Dogs can use arguments. Logicians would say that your dog has just used the disjunctive syllogism. She reasoned like this. Okay, either the prey went left or my prey went right. Sniff, sniff. It didn't go left. Therefore, it went right. So, we're going to have to find something else that separates us apart from our dogs. It's not understanding of words or the ability to reason. It seems like in some sense a dog can do both of those. So I'll tell you a story that happened to my father. This is a true story. So his dog is on the trail of something. They're walking along a path. And eventually they come to a field, and in the field there are 2 deer. And the dog sets off to play with the deer. And as the dog approaches the 2 deer, they take fright, and they dash off in opposite directions at equal speeds. The dog, unable to decide which deer to chase, after all, there are 2 of them, they both took off in opposite directions at the same speed. Unable to reach a decision about which to chase, the dog just sits there, confused. You wouldn't have done that. When you face 2 equally appealing options, you just choose. So there's a difference between you and your dog, right? Though it's one that's more likely to raise a smirk than any sense of a gulf between man and beast. Surprisingly, though, it might be just that. Philosophers, who, after all, are trying to understand the universe, quite often assume that everything happens for a reason. They're a bit like toddlers, always asking why. And like toddlers, they always expect there to be an answer. So, if a dog chases a deer, then the philosophers expect there to be an answer to the question, why? right? And ordinarily, we explain why a dog does something by talking about the dog, what the dog wants and what the dog thinks. So in this case, why did the dog chase the deer? Well, the dog wanted to play with the deer and thought that by running in the deer's direction, that would enable it to achieve this aim of playing with the deer. The problem, though, is what to say about cases where you decide between equally appealing options. Suppose I offer you 2 biscuits on a plate. 2 identical biscuits, 2 digestives, say. Now, you pick the one on the left, let's suppose, but why? Why did you pick the one on the left rather than the one on the right? You didn't have any reason to pick the one on the left rather than the one on the right. They were identical biscuits, and yet somehow you made that choice. It looks like what we have here is a counterexample to that philosopher's claim that everything happens for a reason. Or imagine God creating the universe. Why did he create the universe exactly when he did? Why didn't he do it 10 minutes later? As with the biscuits, any time is as good as any other. Al-Ghazali, who was an 11th century Islamic philosopher, argued that God just chose, right? He just decided a time to start the universe. He didn't have a reason to start on that time. He's got this divine power to just choose for no reason at all. In contrast, there's always a reason why a dog does something. Why did your dog chase the deer? Well, because it wanted to play with the deer. But God can do things for no reason at all. According to Ghazali, this divine power is echoed in man. When you choose a biscuit, your action also has no explanation. There's no reason why you picked the one on the left rather than the one on the right. God's choices can just come from nowhere, and so can ours. But your dog is merely terrestrial. There's always a reason why your dog does anything. So when my father's dog was faced with 2 equally appealing options, that's why she just froze. It would be an amusing predicament, wouldn't it, to be set apart from the animals by the divine ability to do things for no reason at all. At the start of your walk, you were probably hoping for a more significant mark of distinction. Well, maybe it's more important than it seems at first. Consider that your dog cannot choose what to live for. She prefers chasing to bathing, say, but she never decided to devote herself to chasing things. In contrast, you might wonder what to devote your life to. You might think, should I live a life of knowledge, or should I instead live a life of pleasure? Now, when you choose to devote yourself to knowledge, there cannot be a reason for your choice. Suppose you choose knowledge because you think that learning will bring you pleasure. In that case, you're not really devoting yourself to knowledge, you're really devoting yourself to pleasure. You can't look beyond knowledge for a reason to devote yourself to it. Otherwise, you're not really devoting yourself to knowledge for its own sake. Choosing a purpose for your life is therefore like choosing biscuits. You just choose. This argument, or something like it anyway, comes from Peter John Olivi, who was a 13th century French philosopher. If he's right, then perhaps my father's encounter with the deer really does illustrate a vital trait of humanity. There are more of these, and like I said at the beginning, there are also the Mobile Philosopher books, which are similar to this, but which have different content in them. So if you enjoyed this, you'll probably enjoy those books. There are 3 of them, and they're available in the usual places. Thanks for listening.